All right then. So, hello everyone. My name is Jussi. As some of you may guess, I work at Rovio, and I'm here to talk to you about Grunt.js and specifically on how to optimize your applications with it. So, Grunt.js may or may not be familiar to people here. So, who of you know of Grunt? Okay, quite a lot. So who of you use Grunt in your daily work? Yeah, quite a lot. Cool. So Grunt is basically a Node.js based task runner that has a lot of open source tasks for it, such as concatenation, minification, whatever you can think of. Like, it's basically the make or rake or maven for JavaScript or front-end applications in general. So refresh. Okay, here's our example project. Can everyone see the font? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have basically some basic stuff here, like git attributes, git ignore. Then we have our grunt file here. We have a config folder, which basically contains some of our shared configurations. I'll come back to that later. Then we have app folder, which is basically our application source. We have a dist folder, which is it contains all our temporary files and other files that are generated on the fly, but we don't want to distribute or add to the source control. We have tests, of course, because every good example application must have tests. And then we have a public folder for our document root. So the first thing I want to mention is that like good coding practices, they apply to your configuration code as well. Because even for our example application, can anyone, by the way, guess what our example application is going to be?
Sudo.
No, sorry.
RSS reader.
No, sorry. Well, you're actually looking at it. So the slides are the example application. Well, it's kind of an ideal example application. There's not much logic. It's a simple single page application, some web font, image or images. So we're gonna go and optimize this, but even for this project, the grunt file is 300 lines of code, of CoffeeScript code. So make sure that you apply good coding practices. So our bare bones, this is usually what I start with as my grunt file. So we have basically an external config file, which basically tells or has references to all our JavaScript files or style sheets and shared test configurations and stuff like this. Then we have, well, this is basically useless. We just set the environment to the config as well, so that we can reference to it in our underscore templates. We set the package to the config as well, so that we can reference to the package JSON stuff also in the templates. Then we just extend that object with our grunt specific configurations. Here I have something, a four-liner that basically gets all the tasks in your package.json, and it just goes through them and sees which ones of them are grunt tasks and adds them to your project. By the way, I'm gonna have a lot of code examples, so You don't really have to pay attention to them. They're just decorations in the background. So, oh, I even forgot one task there. Oh, oops. So what I like to start with when I begin a new project is usually copy-paste. No, I define the goals. So we basically have our compilation phase. So we create the assets for JS, CSS, HTML assets and templates. Then the same for minifying. So we want to minify JS, minify CSS, minify HTML, minify assets, minify templates. Then we have two tasks, build dev and build production, where build dev just does the compilation phase and build production also does the minifying phase. So for our JavaScript, I used Grunt concat, which is, well, if you've ever used the command line cat, it basically does the same thing. Then for the CSS, also concat, because I have a static generated font reference file, so I want to concatenate that with my style sheets. And then we have HTML, which is, we just copy our index.html from the app folder to our public folder. Why we want to copy this to the public folder, I'll come back to that later. And the same for assets, we just copy them from the app folder to the public folder. Then for templates, because I'm using Angular, there's a tool made by Sangli here called Prangler, which basically takes your external templates and injects them into your Angular cache so that you can actually include them in your JavaScript so that you don't have to make extra requests for each template, which is a nice optimization. Then we have a copy here, which also copies the templates before doing the Prangler to a temporary directory. Again, I'll come back to as to why we do that. So, wrapping up our compile phase, it would look something like this. So we basically do first Prangler, and then we concatenate the result with our JavaScript. Then, yeah. So, yeah, these are some really nice optimization tips. Concatenation, who'da thunk? But it is, I think, the single most important thing. If you're not doing any other kinds of optimization, please at least do the concatenation, because HTTP requests are really expensive. But we want to go further. So let's say you're serving your application from a CDN. So you have assets like images, a web font, JavaScript, CSS, and your HTML. So you want to upload them to a CDN and cache them for as long as possible. But then if you change them, you don't want your application to break, basically. So what do you do about that? The first time I saw this solved was in Ruby on Rails. They basically do something called revision marking, where they apply a hash of the file in front of the file name, so that they're actually, every time you change the file, the URL also changes, which is a very simple thing to make sure that all your URLs are actually permanent and can be delivered through a CDN. So there's a tool for that for Grunt as well. called Grunt.js. So we basically, for that, we just define that use SHA-1 because, like, well, Linus Torvald said that it would work, so I believe him. Yeah, and we do that for our assets, JS, and CSS. So now we have a problem that we have all these files that we can't possibly guess the name of beforehand. So do you want to manually change these links after every build? No way. So there's a tool for that as well. So Grunt usemin, which basically goes through your HTML and CSS to find the links that don't match to any file, and it basically detects if you've used grunt rep for the files and knows which file to change the link to, so it fixes all the broken links for you, which is quite nice because let me tell you, you don't want to do this manually. Then for minifying JS, just uglify, pretty basic stuff. We first run the compilation phase, then we uglify it, then we do the revision marking. After that, minifying CSS, so we compile, then we go with usemin to fix the links, then we revision mark. Then for HTML, we use first we compile, then we use usemin to fix the links again, and then we use HTML min, which is a nice Grunt plugin that uses HTML minifier to minify your HTML. Then for assets, you could use something like PNG Quant or other image minification tools, but I didn't want to include them in this presentation, so we'll just revision mark our assets. Okay, so templates, what we want to do is actually we want to use usemin for our templates as well, so that we can have references to assets in the templates as well. And also HTML min. So all this happens before using Prowler, of course, so that we don't have to look for the references in JavaScript strings. That would be uncool. So putting it all together, we would have a production build phase like this. So minify assets, minify CSS, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this funny task called usemin prepare, which is also a part of usemin. What it does is it goes through your grunt config and figures out, it kind of analyzes it to make sure that it can link to the right files and everything. Are we done yet? Sorry. So what we did now was basically we broke the refresh button. So we have this build phase you definitely don't want to do every time you make changes to your files. So there's also a tool for that in Grunt called Grunt Watch, which basically you give it the file pattern, like here. We want to watch every file in our app folder, and then if those files change in any way, we run the build dev task. And here, the same for production, except that we run the build production task. And you might want to pair it up with Grunt Contrib Connect, which is a very simple HTTP server you can use with Grunt. So first, just set up an HTTP server, and then watch for the files change. So now we have, if we, for example, currently I'm running here Grunt.dev. So it initially compiles all the resources and then gives me the HTTP server at localhost. And we can also run in the production mode. Let's see if we'll have a demo effect actually, because I didn't test this. So refresh. Yeah, it works. Great. So if we look at the source code here, we can actually see that all the files have been revision marked. So we have a script here. It has a funny hash in front of it. We have a CSS file here, and if we go back to here, so let's see. Here we have a center tag. Who remembers that? We also the images are hash marked, so nice. Okay. So the last thing I want to mention is that you can also have a lot of code quality stuff with Grunt. Most importantly for front end, I would suggest trying Karma, which is a great test runner for front end applications. It was initially developed for Angular.js, but it works with, well, I usually use it for every front-end test thing I do, so that's a good tool. Istanbul, it works with Karma pretty well. It's a code coverage tool, so you can see where your test coverage is weak and where to improve. I can actually show you if we run tests in our test project. So, oops, Grunt, I have a pre-commit task that runs the tests. So it basically just runs our stupid little tests, and then we can open our coverage report. So we can see here that I've been lazy and I didn't write end-to-end tests, so everything else is tested except the directives. Oh, yeah, and you can even see it line by line, like it shows you, like here we have a function that's not covered, here we have a statement that's not covered, and stuff like this. I recommend that you try it out. Then, oops. Another tool is Plato, which is a code quality reporter. So we can run it like run Plato. I didn't actually try this, so let's see, this report index.html. So it kind of shows you where your errors might be and what to refactor and stuff like this. It's one of those things that would be good to have on a screen somewhere to remind you.
When you open a file.
Oh yeah, so let's, for example, open our slide controller. So the maintainability index is broken at the moment in Plato, or maybe I'm just a really good coder. Yeah. And
work when you use a CoffeeScript, because then you test the generated code, right?
yeah, so it works either way. I actually have a project where I'm using it for generated code, so I have my CoffeeScript generate one big file, and then, well, it doesn't make much difference if you can still see the function names and everything, so it's quite easy to tell what the complexity is. Same for like Istanbul, it's pretty easy to spot the coverage weaknesses even with generated code. So here we can see like per function, even like complexity. Well, our application is so complex, one-liner functions and everything. So yeah, that's Plato. Then JS hint. How many of you have used JS hint? Yeah, it's if you like linting and tools telling you that you're doing your job wrong, then I suggest you try it out. I like it at least. Same for CSS lint. Like if you're really stubborn with your like usage of ID selectors and want to get rid of them, then have it shout at you for doing your job wrong. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Unless you have anything you'd want me to show. So thank you. So questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to give a comment that the community has the tool called Yeoman Generator that pretty much generate, as you said, 300 lines of code with all the best practices. So you don't have to go each and every one and to make them configure. Then you can easily change the variable to suit you to suit your project. But from my experience with only Yeoman Generator, that's pretty much done, and I can concentrate on my code. It also includes some really cool tools like run reload, live reload. That when you change the script, the browser automatically reload. And also, for example, the compass sprite generator. So it puts all the image together in a big image and gives you the sprite. So
yeah. Yeoman is a pretty good tool to use with Grunt. And the only problem I have with Yeoman is that once you kind of set up the template, then it kind of is what it is. Then you can't like upgrade to a newer version of the template or anything very easily. So
yeah,
that's
what I have done to, for example, upgrade that Yeoman template is just reset the commit to something near the born of the project update, and then rebase or merge all the commits.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it quite a lot of conflicts, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Oh, I have the source code for our example application actually there. So if anyone wants to check out the code, go right ahead and complain that it sucks. So, any? Oh.
Have you used Harbor on HelsinkiJS?
No, I haven't actually.
Because I wasted a lot of my life trying to make it work.
I've tried HelsinkiJS a few times, and eventually I always decide that it's not really worth it. So
yeah, just comment on that HelsinkiJS. I used to use that HelsinkiJS, but when I moved to AngularJS, it has its own dependency injection. And with the Grunt usemin, the concatenate on the JavaScript file, so I no longer use HelsinkiJS.
Yeah, so basically in the test, at least the Angular dependency injection is pretty easy to achieve for Karma. I really don't know about HelsinkiJS. I haven't written any tests for it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that, the Grunt file alone is 300 lines, so here we only define our Grunt specific stuff. So our tasks and their configurations, but we actually have a build JSON here, which defines our JavaScript stuff. And you might also want to, at least I do. I like to run my tests against both the minified code and the like non-minified code. So you can see like on the build server if it fails, or locally if it fails due to minifying problems or due to like actual code being broken. Yeah, so that's why we have a shared Karma configuration here, and then we just have 2 Karma configurations here that are very short because they have a shared configuration. Yeah. And yeah.
Bit of problem here. I want to use those tools with legacy software. I can't change the directory start structure. How to integrate those with so that I could use modern web tools with crappy PHP.
Yeah, you might want to consider having a build server and that has Node.js installed, then just or maybe you want to just run Grunt locally and then just commit the generated files, but I'd recommend against that.
We actually use run PHP project, and we use Grunt only in the development environment, so we use it for watching less files and JavaScript files, and if necessary concatenate them and such, and it works quite well. You just have to pick the right tools, and you can't get everything. So, but in general it works.
Yeah.
Works. They are quite separate. Like you have your. In our case, we have it so that we kind of copy the distribution version or the development version of the JS files, for example, into our project, and then the project registers the files. So we just kind of build them that way. Yeah. And the styles, we have one CSS file, which is like main.css, that is built by Grunt with Watch, and then we just include that file. That's it. Yeah. And it's really efficient. Yeah, even with that kind of project.
I only have experience with integrating Grunt with Maven, which I personally would strongly advise against. Well, if you have a 8-minute build time with Maven and then start adding more tools, then you're in for a bad time. So yeah, for PHP, of course, there's the thing that if you're in control of your deployment cycle, like if you can actually install programs on the build servers or stuff like this, then it shouldn't be too hard to actually install Grunt as well. But yeah.
I could actually tag a tweet on Twitter with HelsinkiJS and put my application template, and those interested can go in and look how you can integrate it with a PHP application. That's probably, if someone needs an example, how it can be done. So I'll do that.
I will.
All right, I'll do it then.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.